So I wanted to start working on the canopy to basically protect the model, the interior. So what I did first was cut out this vac form canopy and wash it with soap and water in preparation for dipping it into acrylic floor wax. Here's why.
Ouch. What? How are you, little boo-boo? Buddha, 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 little Buddha. Hi. Well, hi, dummy. Oh, aren't you just throwing fur everywhere? Perfect.
Yep, kitty fur gets everywhere. So if you put acrylic floor wax around this stuff and there's kitty fur, you're in trouble. So I've washed this to get rid of all the cat fur and oil, and I'm very carefully picking it up. And I have test fit this, and it fits surprisingly well. There's a little piece of plastic there I didn't cut out right, but that'll come off by itself. I'm not worried about that. But what you do just with plastic models or canopies in general, dip them in some kind of clear acrylic floor wax, and it makes them really makes them shine, makes them very clear. So you steal your wife's Tupperware without telling her, and then you put in your acrylic floor wax, and then you dip your canopy in there. And you just want to make sure it's all completely covered. So you just sort of make sure that it goes underneath, and you've got the top and the bottom and the inside and the sides. Everything's all coated. And what this will do will greatly, greatly, greatly enhance the clarity of the canopy. And it works for everything. I use it on all my canopies, plastic models, paper models, whatever. So it also protects things a little bit when you start to add paint and glue, etc. Then I sort of let some of the acrylic come off on a tissue paper or paper towel, and then you just let it sit and dry. Don't leave it on the tissue paper because it'll dry and stick, and then you got fuzzies from the paper. What I do is put it on a piece of like just regular typing paper or something and kind of move it every once in a while to make sure it didn't stick. And let it dry all day. Don't play with it anymore because you're kind of worried. I cut all these out and I put black on the inside of them with a Sharpie. But those are what's going to go on there. I'm going to glue them on, I guess, with, excuse me, with a tacky glue. So here is the interior rear section, the gunner's sort of sighting. I used some kit parts, but I had to shorten that middle barrel quite a bit. I put a couple pieces of tape around it to give it some structure. And then you can see that I added all kinds of little boxes and wires based on pictures I saw. I think it looks pretty cool, actually. I like it a lot. So again, the idea, then I painted it up just with a brush, dry brushed it. You can't really see it too well here, but it looks really cool. It's got these little ears on the sides. I got a little Revy gun sight to the left there, complete with a little piece of clear plastic. There's his little trigger, and I got all these wires I used made with fuse wires, and it looks very much like what I saw in pictures. It's not exact, but it's better than what they had in the kit. And again, I used some of the supports from the kit, and I used the middle tube, but the tube was too long because the supports don't just fit on the outside rim edge of the canopy. They're sort of on the inside, so I shortened it. And the best thing is, it all still fits inside the canopy. Nothing gets crushed. So pretty pleased with actually how it's turned out. It looks pretty awesome. Now I started out by saying I wanted to put the canopy on to protect everything so I could then spray and sand and prime the fuselage. Problem is I realized I got to put the nose piece on too. Otherwise it will look kind of dumb. It has to be faired in and be nice and clean. So I thought, okay, I better put this piece on. That piece is cut out as per the plans. The white parts on there are going to be windows. But I started by adding it right to this top piece and then a little down one side. That balsa former, by the way, I trimmed it down so that when I put when I put the piece of paper on there, the skin, it's level with everything else. So I made it a little bit smaller a little bit thinner than the paper that it's up against. So again, when I put this little nose piece on, it should be a nice smooth transition, which it turns out it is. Worked out really well. But this I decided to put on. It's complicated. It's like a pedal design and everything, but I decided to just start by putting on a little piece at a time. So I stick on this piece and hold it in place, and then I can actually put on the one side quite easily. The one side actually fits really nice, which is good. And when that's on there, again, the idea is to get a smooth transition, and that front end is actually kind of important. It's a really good, it's a specific shape of the front of this 410. So the bottom part of it and then the part that's the tulip, I'll work on that a little bit later. If I get the edges on, I think I'll be okay. But as I'm putting this on, I'm starting to think to myself, wait a second. Once this is on, I still really can't start the fuselage, filling it up, because I need to put on this bottom piece. There's a bottom piece that goes underneath the wing. Yeah, see how smooth that is? That turned out really nice. The shape is pretty good. But there's this bottom piece that goes under where those wooden formers are, near where my thumb was there. And so I realizing here that, I really can't put the canopy on yet and start sanding the fuselage anyway, because the fuselage needs to have that bottom piece on there. Because if you're going to put putty and sand and prime and rinse and repeat, you may as well make sure everything's there, and it will all come into a nice transition, and it will all look like you did it at one time. So that's the idea. But anyway, once one side is dry, then you can kind of pull and tug and put this piece on the other side, down the side of the nose. It again fits very well. I'm really starting to wonder if whoever made this model, what scared me away from it really was the artwork and the coloring. But the actual pieces so far, I gotta say, they fit just as well as anything else I've ever put together. Because this I thought would be a real pain. Anyway, I leave the bottom parts open because I'm not sure how to get those on there and together. They're supposed to line up with a couple of holes on this bottom piece where some cannons come through. So I kind of leaving those open until I figure how I'm going to put that bottom piece on. But when I cut that out and put the frame on it with the glass, it'll look cool. But I'm just showing you that it's nice and smooth there. Nice transition. There's no step. Looks pretty awesome. I'll be curious to see what it looks like under a coat of primer. But again, the idea would be at some point to put all this clear parts on, mask them, and then start working on the sanding and priming the fuselage. So here's this bottom piece that's going to match up, and I've test fitted a bunch of times. Those pieces, I'm a little dubious how those are going to go together, and you'll see that I do get them together, but they're not perfect. I'm not sure if they're the way they're really supposed to be. This has a couple of cuts in there that I put together and put some tabs, my own tabs on there. And you can see that I tried to form it and I kind of crumpled it in a couple places, crumpled it up. It'll be okay because we're going to, again, sand and fill this. If you were actually a really good paper modeler, that wouldn't happen. But here I'm test fitting it to see how it's going to go. And to my amazement, it actually rolls around the outside and seems to fit pretty dang well. Pretty pleased with it. It looks like it's supposed to be together and has formed this sheet around there. It's going to look good. But then I realized, wait a second, I got to put the wing on too. So I can't put that piece on until I put the stupid wing on. So I had no intention whatsoever putting the wing on, because that to me is a bridge too far. I mean, I wasn't ready for that. I wanted to leave the wing off so I could work on the fuselage and do all the sanding and priming of the fuselage and putting in panel lines. But now I'm kind of at the point where, well, I'm kind of forced into it. So I decided to go ahead and add the wing. So this ended up being, that's why the title was funny for this little video, because I started with one thing and I end up putting a whole bunch of it together. So I'm putting some glue down on places where it's going to touch the bottom of the fuselage and on the spar. The wing, by the way, fits very well. I think it's a little wide, and that might be, again, my fault, because it was hard to figure out where to put those ribs. However, I think it's going to be okay once we put fillets in there. And then I put in some glue into that spar area just to be doubly sure. And then you just slide it on top. Kind of center it, make sure it's good. And it flops right down and it butts up. The spar only goes in so far. And you make sure it's straight and perpendicular to the fuselage as best you can. Now my fuselage is a little bit banana-like, so I have to sort of do a few things by eye. And you'll notice when I'm done here, these things do not come together. They should. They're supposed to come together, and they're supposed to be dead center down the middle. They're not. But that's designer. I mean, not designer. That's builder error. That's not the designer. Um, but this is how I did it. Then I put some glue on the inside underneath those flaps and made sure that they're closed down. This is all helping to lock the wing in place, which is a good thing. And so I'm making sure it's all together, and that will again keep the wing nice and solid in there. Ultimately, I've already checked a few times to make sure it looks good, and it does. The wing fillets are going to go on the wing root are going to be critical, and they might have to be enlarged. I don't know. I'll cut them out later and see if they fit, because those will make a smooth transition on the top part of the wing. And the bottom part, a lot of sins will be hidden by that bottom panel, which again is kind of crumpled in places, but it's going to be filled and contoured. Those parts there, that's supposed to be dead center. It's not. And they're supposed to come together in the center, and they don't. And then back there, those are supposed to be, I assume, up against the fuselage, but they're not. So we'll see how that goes. In general, though, I was so surprised. There it is. This stupid airplane is, marginally together, and it looks good. My son even thinks so. What a weirdo. Anyway, just like his old man. Now, we're going to put that bottom chin piece on there. And after a bunch of test fitting, I decided to do was just open that up and then put some glue on here and slide it up underneath. And see those little eye pieces? They're supposed to line up. That's a cannon's going to go in there. Mine don't. The geometry is such that I'm not sure how they would, unless my formers and stuff are not quite right. I'm going to make things work. Again, it won't matter, but I think if you were actually really good at this, I think that you would line them up and they would work. Or maybe you'd start with that nose section and put it together and then add it, because it would have the right angles that way. But I didn't elect to do that. Next time, maybe. Anyway, I put some glue where I think we're going to need contact. And then I put some glue underneath the fuselage where those little formers are, just so they'll have a little place to latch on a little bit. And the idea is this is going to be what you're going to see. And again, when you put it on, you'll see that it looks a little, a little questionable. It matches up pretty dang well. I'm surprised the panel lines and stuff that are drawn on, it actually matches well. But when I'm saying I mean, you can see there's crumpled parts where I tried to pre-form it to the right shape, because there are some relief cuts in there. Anyway, I went ahead and put this in, make sure the edges are nice and clean up against the sides of the fuselage, which they are. And then I just start squeezing and moving back. I made sure that the center is centered. And again, it fits nice. I mean, in terms of where it fits on the bottom of that wing, everything kind of makes sense. Panel lines seem to line up. The piece actually fits kind of flush and nice up against there. It goes around the leading edge okay. So I can't really complain. That big divot will have to be, like someone backed a truck into it. That'll have to be fixed with Bondo and bodywork. But it'll be okay when I'm finished. And now I'm just making sure that it's nice and tight against the fuselage. There's a couple places where I have to add a little extra glue to make sure it sticks and make sure it's crimped up in there. But overall, it's coming together, and it's gonna look really good. The key will be to do some good makeup artistry on it. Down there, it didn't quite glue, so I'm putting some more glue inside and just kind of squeezing those two pieces together so that they'll be up against the fuselage. It'll help with strength and stuff, but also to keep it so that it's a place where I can start contouring with putty if I need to. Anyway, I do it on the other side as well, because both sides need to be tucked in a little bit. But again, when I put this on, originally I thought it was going to be a nightmare, and it fits very well. I'd love to build this thing again, because and be careful about some of these places where I'm sort of going to be doing them by brute force. such as this. I decided the best way to do this is to put some glue underneath and then just fold them together. The center seam will line up, although I don't glue it quite yet because I'm going to fiddle with that later. But I decided to just basically fold this down together and push it down. Shouldn't be like that. I think it should be butted up against that chin piece. But the contour looks good to me. And when I start adding some putty and making it even nicer, I think everything will turn out great. That little W with the white piece on there, that's where the cannon I think is going to go. And on mine, it's off center. So again, I'm going to make my own. And here's where I'm going to basically form this. It's almost already formed. It almost goes together perfectly, just not quite. But I'm going to be sort of forming this. I already have a little bit with my rounding tools, but just to get the petals so they come together. They don't look bad. And again, they'll be buttressed with super glue and sanded, and they will end up looking pretty nice when I'm all done. But there's the front end and the underneath. Looks like a 410 to me. That's the piece I'm going to put some plastic into it, and that's going to basically glue on there when I cut all that white, and that'll be a window that goes all the way around. So that's going to look slick. So, overall, starting just wanting to get the canopy prepped and then put, yeah, you can see the nose has a good shape, I think, to it. It looks like a good front end, and even the sides look okay. Starting out trying to just get the canopy on so that I could start sanding, and I ended up doing all this and putting the wing on. So, there you go, best laid plans. But it will continue to come together and look good. It's I'm just trying to show you the underside. There's the underside again. Again, at first glance, it looks fine. If you look carefully and you get the right shadow, oofta may. There's some parts that are iffy, but they will be fixed. And so I am quite pleased with how this turns out and how fast it's going together. I guess wing roots next. We'll see how that goes.